Good morning, welcome back, good afternoon if it's afternoon where you're at. I was doing some reading this morning for a class and it was talking about spiritual disciplines and things that we do in our lives that are conscious acts that are to help us grow spiritually, to help us to love God more, to trust God more. And I got to thinking about our giving and our spending and our focus in life. Specifically, I was thinking about our tithe and how we come to God with our money. And as a Christian, a tithe is part of something that we are called to do. It's not necessarily something that's going to keep us from heaven, but it's something that could possibly keep some blessings from us, depending on really what your how you come to the throne with the tithe. If you're doing it out of just duty versus out of love, there's a whole bunch of different theological things that you can get into there that we don't really need to talk about here. But I want to talk about the opportunities that we have to give and what something as simple as bringing a tithe into the church can do for us. So if we look at a spiritual discipline, whether it be reading the Bible or praying, gathering in fellowship with one another, whatever you want to look at, it's like training for a marathon. So if you know you're going to be running a marathon, you probably need to do some sort of training. You're going to be running, you're going to be doing some cross training, maybe swimming, different things like that. But you're building up your muscles so that when the time comes to actually run the race, you're able to run it, and you're able to run it to the best of your ability without, passing out after the first half of a mile or whatever it is because you've never run before in your life. So a spiritual discipline is kind of the same thing. And if we look at tithing sort of as a spiritual discipline, something that we do in our life to build up our spiritual muscles, this is the starting point for a Christian for what we are supposed to give. So a tithe, let's look at that. 10%, a tenth of our income. Again, we're not really too focused on this, but if we do this regularly and consistently, it's building up a spiritual muscle, something that is countercultural to what we do every day. So often we are a consumer society where we're just constantly buying things for ourselves. We're, buying necessities for one, our food, our clothing. We're taking care of our shelter needs. But we're also going above and beyond and going more into wants, even in those categories, whether we're talking about going out to eat, maybe we don't want to cook today, or we want some better food, going completely organic. However you want to look at it. The house, how much do we really need in a house? What do we need to be able to survive versus what do we want? So getting back into the discipline of giving, if we're constantly focused on ourselves versus on others, we're in a place where we're not going to, one, be able to give because of probably being in debt or not having enough to give, but we also haven't learned that giving causes us joy. It changes things within inside of us that we really can't distinguish unless you've been somebody that has given. The same goes for serving, whether you're helping out in your church, helping out a neighbor. There's a certain thing that changes inside of us when we look to love others as God has called us to love. When Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was, he answered the greatest commandment is this, that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. The second is this, that you should love your neighbor as yourself. Well, when we think about how we love ourselves and generously purchase things for ourselves, that's also kind of how we should look at our neighbors, those that are in need around us. Not even just in need, but to be able to help somebody out or just give them a gift because you love them, you care for them. There's so much joy that we get from being able to give. And if we can look outside of ourselves and start to look more outwardly on the people around us, we're going to be able to see that there are things that we can do. And it's not always just with our money, but our money is the example in this. So by practicing giving, we learn to become more generous. If we start with a tenth, if we're just wanting to look at numbers, if we start with a tenth, then eventually we're going to be able to do maybe 15%, maybe 20%. Maybe we get to the point where it's 50% or 90%, or maybe we've built so much wealth that it's 95%. We're able to give so much because we have been wise with our money. We have learned to be generous, that this money that we've got is not of our own. It's been gifted to us by God, and that He's allowing us to do these wonderful things to help others and to build up others along the way for His kingdom. So it's just a thought today that I had on our money, and how when we learn to take care of ourselves, when we learn to live more within our means, to maybe even think less about ourselves and what we do right now, how overall we become more joyful, we become more thankful. There's just such a better life that we have when we're able to look past our own selfish desires and look to others and be able to help them, to love them, to care for them, but more importantly, to look to God and say, thank you for all that you've blessed us with. Thank you for providing for us always and extravagantly, as we've been able to see, as we've been able to give to others and care for others. So just a little food for your thought today as you move into the weekend. I hope that you'll think about this, pray about this, and just really contemplate in your own life what this looks like and how you can make some simple changes so that this can become a reality. Thank you, and God bless.